You knew nothing about Native Americans. Now I will tell you their secret, which few people know. I will tell you how they survived the cold winters in their camps. When the icy wind sweeps across the endless plains and snow covers the ground with a blanket several meters thick, modern man seeks refuge in technology. But how did those who had neither central heating nor modern insulation survive? The indigenous peoples of North America did not just wait out the winter, they lived through it, using knowledge honed over millennia. Their camps became islands of warmth and life in the middle of a frozen world. The secret was not in fighting nature, but in a deep understanding of its laws. They knew how to turn the very threat, the bitter cold, into their main ally. Watch the video to the end to find out how snow could be a better insulator than any modern material, and why the correct placement of a single stone by the fire was valued more than the hottest flame. What if I told you that everything you believed about survival wasn't entirely true? The main secret to Native American winter survival was not a clever trap or a warm blanket. Their main tool, their main fortress, was social organization. Winter was a time when the community became a single organism, where the well-being of each individual depended on the actions of all. A lone individual had no chance of surviving the long and harsh winter. Only those who knew how to work together survived. Preparations for winter began long before the first frost. It was a collective effort in which all able-bodied members of the tribe participated, gathering firewood, collecting and drying provisions. All this was done with the needs of the entire community in mind. Food supplies were never a purely personal matter. There were unwritten laws according to which the more fortunate hunters and gatherers shared with those who were less fortunate. This principle of mutual assistance was the basis of survival. The location of the winter camp was chosen by the elders after lengthy discussions. Dozens of factors were taken into account: protection from the wind, proximity to water and firewood supplies. A mistake in choosing a location could be fatal for the entire tribe. There was a strict division of labor within the community. While the men reinforced the dwellings and monitored fuel supplies, the women processed skins, sewed warm clothes, and prepared food. Everyone contributed to the common cause. The long winter evenings were a time for strengthening social ties. Stories were told around the hearth, and myths and legends were passed on. This was not just entertainment, but a way to preserve cultural identity and pass on accumulated knowledge to future generations. The elderly, no longer capable of hard physical labor, played a key role. They were the keepers of wisdom, and their advice on weather, hunting, or healing was worth its weight in gold. Their experience was a strategic resource for the tribe. Thus, the winter camp was not just a cluster of dwellings. It was a complex social system, perfectly tuned to withstand the elements. It was unity and mutual aid that allowed people to thrive where life seemed impossible. I'm very interested to hear your point of view. Do you think mutual assistance is still as important in modern society for overcoming difficulties? Write about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Want to know the secret that determined the outcome of winter before the first snow fell? The success of the entire wintering period depended 90% on one single decision: choosing the right place for the camp. It was a chess game with nature, where the first move was the most important. The main criterion was protection from the wind, the main enemy in the winter steppe or forest. A deep valley, a dense grove, or the foot of a hill on the leeward side was considered the ideal location. A properly chosen shelter could increase the perceived temperature by several degrees. The second most important factor was proximity to a source of fuel. A winter camp consumed a huge amount of firewood for heating and cooking. Being located near a forest or dry wood saved energy and time, which were invaluable in the cold. The availability of a non-freezing water source was the third prerequisite. This could be a fast-flowing stream that did not have time to freeze over, or a deep river with an ice hole. Carrying water from far away or melting snow was extremely energy-intensive. The tribes of the Great Plains also took into account the availability of pasture for their horses. Places where the wind blew away the snow, exposing dry grass, were ideal. This allowed them to preserve their livestock, on which the tribe's mobility and hunting success depended. Experienced chiefs knew how to read the landscape. They paid attention to how lichen grew on trees, where the snow fell deeper, and where it was blown away. These subtle signs provided comprehensive information about wind patterns and microclimate characteristics. The camp was never set up at the very bottom of the valley, where the coldest air accumulated. Preference was given to small terraces or slopes located slightly higher up. This ensured better air circulation and protection from morning fog. Proximity to winter hunting grounds was also taken into account. The camp had to be far enough away so as not to scare away game, but not too far. It was a delicate balance between safety and accessibility of resources. Sometimes the tribe would split into several small winter camps. This reduced the impact on the environment and minimized the risk that one bad choice of location would jeopardize everyone. It was a kind of risk diversification. Do you think the fundamental principles of choosing a place to live have changed since then? In the next chapter, we will reveal the main secret of insulating dwellings. You will learn how Native Americans turned what brought cold into their most reliable protection. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of the northern peoples, which turns all notions of cold upside down. They did not fight the snow. They used it as one of the most effective and accessible insulators, turning a deadly threat into a cozy blanket. The principle behind this method is ingenious in its simplicity. Freshly fallen snow contains a huge amount of air trapped between the snowflakes. It is this air that is the ideal heat insulator, with properties that are not inferior to modern materials. After a dwelling, whether a tipi or a wigwam, was erected, its base was carefully covered with snow. A high and dense snow wall was created around the perimeter. This wall completely blocked the icy wind that could penetrate under the edges of the covering. But this was only the first step. The most experienced craftsmen went further. They deliberately threw snow onto the walls of the dwelling until it covered them with a thick layer. From the outside, the teepee turned into a large snowdrift. This layer of snow served several purposes. First, it created a powerful barrier against cold air. The temperature inside such a snowdrift could be tens of degrees higher than outside. Secondly, the snow protected the roof of the dwelling from the destructive effects of the wind. The skins or bark did not crack in the cold and did not wear away from constant gusts. The snow took the full brunt of the elements. Thirdly, a thick layer of snow significantly improved sound insulation. The howling of the winter blizzard was practically inaudible inside. This created an atmosphere of calm and security. To maintain the effectiveness of this method, certain knowledge was required. The snow had to be periodically compacted and new snow added after snowfalls. A small ventilation hole was also left to prevent moisture accumulation. This technique was especially important for the peoples of the subarctic, where winters were the harshest. They perfected the art of using snow. Their winter dwellings, half hidden in snowdrifts, were models of energy efficiency. Thus, the Indians did not simply build shelters on the ground. They integrated their dwellings into the winter landscape, making them part of nature. This symbiosis was the key to a comfortable life in extreme conditions. What if everything you've been taught about teepees is outdated? We are used to seeing teepees as simply cones made of poles and skins, the summer dwellings of nomads. But the winter teepee was a complex engineering structure, a real survival machine, where every detail had its own significance. The first and most important difference between a winter teepee and a summer teepee was the inner lining. A second layer of skins was attached to the poles from the inside, which did not reach the ground by about a meter. This lining created an air gap that acted like a thermos, trapping heat inside. This air layer also served another important function. Cold air entering from below, under the edge of the main covering, hit this inner canopy. It then rose, mixed with the warm air from the hearth, and exited through the smoke hole. This system created a constant and adjustable draft. Smoke from the fire did not accumulate in the room, but was effectively removed to the outside. At the same time, there were no drafts inside the dwelling, as cold air did not circulate on the floor. The base of the teepee was carefully insulated. A cushion of moss, dry grass, or even earth was laid around the entire perimeter of the interior. This completely sealed the lower part of the dwelling, leaving no chance for the wind to enter. The floor inside the teepee was not bare earth either. It was covered with a thick layer of fir branches which served as insulation and a kind of springy mattress. Skins were laid on top of the branches, creating a warm and dry surface. Special attention was paid to the entrance. It was always located on the leeward side, usually facing east. The entrance itself was closed not with one, but with 2 layers of skins, creating a kind of vestibule. The main element of climate control was the smoke valves, 2 wings at the top of the teepee. With the help of special poles, they could be turned depending on the direction of the wind. This allowed the hearth to be protected from precipitation and created optimal draft. The hearth was located strictly in the center. This ensured an even distribution of heat throughout the dwelling. A structure made of branches was often built above the hearth to dry wet clothes and shoes. The sleeping places were arranged in a circle along the walls. The most honorable and warmest place, opposite the entrance, was reserved for the head of the family. This layout was not only practical, but also reflected the social structure. All these improvements turned a simple-looking dwelling into a highly efficient and comfortable winter fortress. Which of these principles do you think are used in modern construction? In the next chapter, you will learn how a night fire could burn until morning without supervision. The center of any winter dwelling was the hearth. It not only provided heat and light, but was also a gathering place for the family, a symbol of life in the midst of the cold. However, building a regular fire was inefficient and required constant attention. The secret lay in a special way of stacking the wood, which ensured slow and even burning for many hours. This art allowed the heat to be maintained throughout the night without waking up to add more logs. This method required patience and an understanding of the physics of combustion. For such a fire, the thickest and densest logs from hardwoods were selected. They were stacked very tightly together in the hearth, with virtually no gaps. This limited oxygen access and slowed down the combustion process. Smaller pieces of wood and kindling were placed on top of this dense layer. The fire, lit from above, slowly burned down, layer by layer. This inverted principle of combustion was the key to the longevity of the fire. Stones were often used to control the burning process. The hearth was lined with large boulders that accumulated heat. Once heated, they continued to radiate heat long after the flames had died down. The arrangement of the stones was not random. A large flat stone was often placed behind the hearth as a reflector. It reflected the heat radiation deep into the dwelling, preventing it from escaping uselessly upwards with the smoke. The smoke was also controlled. Properly adjusted smoke valves created ideal draft. This allowed the fire to burn evenly, without flare-ups and excessive smoke, which saved fuel. Preparing firewood was an art in itself. It was never burned when wet. Firewood brought from the forest was first dried for several days inside the dwelling, near the hearth, and only then was it put into the fire. What if I told you that Native Americans knew about convection and thermal radiation long before physicists gave these phenomena their names? They didn't just warm themselves by the fire, they controlled the flows of warm air inside their dwellings, creating a comfortable microclimate with minimal fuel consumption. The aforementioned inner lining of the teepee played a key role in this. It created a directed airflow. Cold air coming in from below did not spread across the floor, but rushed upward through the channel between the 2 layers of skins. Heated by the hearth, this air rose to the smoke hole, but some of it, no longer so hot, descended back down into the living area. This constant circulation ensured an even distribution of heat throughout the entire space. The camp residents intuitively understood these principles. They knew that the warmest place was not right next to the fire, where there were strong air currents, but at a certain distance. The sleeping areas were located precisely in this comfort zone. The arrangement of people and objects inside the dwelling also affected air circulation. Bulky items were not placed in the path of the main air currents. This allowed the air to move freely without turbulence. Humidity control played an important role. Wet clothes were never dried directly over the fire to avoid creating excess steam. They were hung higher up, where warm, dry air effectively absorbed moisture and carried it outside. Even people's breathing was taken into account in this complex system. At night, several people in a confined space gave off a significant amount of heat and moisture. Proper ventilation prevented the air from becoming stuffy and damp. This invisible work of heat management was the pinnacle of domestic wisdom. It allowed a comfortable temperature to be maintained, even when a blizzard raged and the frost crackled behind the thin wall of skins. Which of these observations do you find most surprising? In the next chapter, you will learn how clothing became a personal heating system. Native American winter clothing was not just a set of warm items. It was a carefully designed multi-layered system where each element had its own function. The main principle was to create air pockets, which were the main source of insulation. The basis was clothing made of finely tanned suede, which was worn directly on the body. It was soft, absorbent, and did not restrict movement. This clothing wickeded moisture away from the body, which was critical for preventing hypothermia. The second layer consisted of more spacious clothing made of thick skins with the fur on the inside. The air trapped in the pile created a powerful heat-insulating barrier. The smooth leather surface on the outside provided excellent protection from the wind. The outer layer consisted of loose-fitting capes or cloaks made of whole skins, often with hoods. They could be easily put on or taken off depending on the weather and level of physical activity. This allowed the wearer to avoid overheating and subsequent dangerous cooling. Special attention was paid to protecting the feet. High moccasins for winter were made of thick leather and insulated with fur on the inside. Dry grass or moss was used as insoles, which not only insulated but also absorbed moisture. Snowshoes were used to move through deep snow. This simple but ingenious invention distributed a person's weight over a larger area. This prevented them from sinking into the snow, saving a tremendous amount of energy. Hands were protected by spacious fur mittens. Their design allowed all fingers except the thumb to be together. This significantly reduced heat loss compared to gloves. Headwear was also an essential part of winter clothing. This could be fur hats or hoods that fit snugly around the head. They protected against the wind and prevented heat loss through the head. Survival in winter required enormous energy expenditure. The body was constantly fighting the cold, and it needed high-calorie fuel to maintain its internal stove. The winter diet of indigenous peoples was perfectly balanced for this task. The diet was based on foods high in fat and protein. The main source was pemmican, a unique product that could be called an energy concentrate. It was made from dried and ground meat mixed with melted fat. Dried berries were often added to pemmican. They not only improved the taste but also served as a source of essential vitamins. Properly prepared pemmican could be stored for years without losing its nutritional properties. Hunting did not stop in winter, but it became more difficult. It required great skill and endurance from the hunters. The capture of a large animal could provide the community with food for several weeks. In addition to meat, an important part of the diet was the supplies made in summer and autumn. These were dried mushrooms, roots, nuts, and seeds. They were stored in special pits or leather bags, protecting them from moisture and rodents. Tribes that practiced agriculture, such as the Iroquois, had large stores of corn, beans, and squash. These three crops, known as the Three Sisters, provided a balanced diet. Dried corn, ground into flour, was the basis for many winter dishes. Fishing also continued during the winter. Ice fishing was common in forested and northern regions. It was a reliable source of fresh protein when hunting was unsuccessful. Food was prepared once or twice a day, usually in the form of a thick soup or stew. Hot, fatty food quickly warmed the body and provided a feeling of fullness for a long time. This method of cooking also allowed all parts of the carcass to be used without waste. Winter was not only a time of hardship, but also a period of relative calm. When blizzards raged and hunting was impossible, life in the camp did not come to a standstill. It was a time for activities that there was no time for during the warmer months. The long winter months were devoted to crafts. Men repaired hunting and fishing equipment and made new bows, arrows, and snowshoes. This was careful preparation for the coming spring season. They worked with stone, bone, and wood to create tools and utensils. Each item was not only functional, but often decorated with intricate carvings. These patterns reflected the mythology and worldview of the tribe. Women processed the skins, turning them into soft suede. It was a laborious process that required great skill. The quality of the tanning determined how warm and durable the clothing would be. They used the finished leather to sew clothes, shoes, and covers for teepees. The work was decorated with porcupine quill embroidery and beads. Each pattern had its own meaning and told the story of a family or clan. Winter was the main time for storytelling. Young and old gathered around the hearth to listen to myths about the creation of the world, legends about heroes, and instructive tales. It was the tribe's oral library, a repository of its history and wisdom. The elders passed on their knowledge to the young. They taught them to recognize tracks in the snow, predict the weather by signs, and told them about the properties of plants. It was an informal school of survival. Various rituals and ceremonies were performed. They were aimed at maintaining harmony with the spirit world and ensuring the well-being of the tribe. Winter was a time of deep spiritual life. The most difficult period of winter was often its end. The food supplies prepared in the fall were coming to an end. Winter hunting depleted the animal populations near the camp. This transition period required special prudence and patience. Every portion of food was counted. The community went into the strictest economy mode to hold out until the first greenery and birds arrived. People watched closely for the first signs of approaching spring. Longer daylight hours, changes in animal behavior, swelling buds on trees. These were all long-awaited signs. They instilled hope and gave strength. Preparations began for the migration to summer camps. Equipment for the move was checked and repaired. Future routes were planned based on past experience and observations of nature. People's health was weakened at the end of winter. A monotonous diet and lack of sunlight affected their well-being. Therefore, the first spring plants, rich in vitamins, were especially valued. The melting snow brought new concerns. The risk of flooding increased, especially if the camp was close to a river. It was necessary to monitor the water level and be prepared for a quick evacuation. With the arrival of warm weather, predators became more active. Their hunger after hibernation posed a threat to the camp and the horses. The guards became more vigilant. Despite the difficulties, the anticipation of spring was a joyful time. It meant the end of a long period of cold and darkness. Ahead lay warmth, abundance of food, and new opportunities. The awakening of nature was a great celebration. Special rituals were performed to welcome spring. People thanked the spirits for helping them survive the harsh times. The end of winter was not just a change of season. It was a symbol of the cyclical nature of life, the victory of warmth over cold, resilience, and endurance. Successfully surviving the winter gave people confidence in their abilities and confirmed the correctness of their chosen way of life. The secrets of Native American winter survival are not just a set of practical tips. They are a holistic philosophy of living in harmony with nature. They did not conquer the elements, but became part of them, using their own laws for their prosperity. Their knowledge of heating, construction, nutrition, and social organization is impressive in its depth and effectiveness. This legacy proves that human ingenuity and adaptability know no bounds. The history of these peoples teaches us that the most valuable resource is not technology, but the wisdom accumulated over generations. What other topics related to the lives of the indigenous peoples of North America would you like to see on our channel? Share your ideas in the comments and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on new fascinating explorations of the past.